We've chosen the Nissan Navara as the latest candidate for our range review series. As one of the most popular utes on the market, it's a vehicle we get a lot of questions about. Here we've got a trio of 4x4 dual cab variants to test. What do you get for your money? Kicking off proceedings is the fleet-favoured Navara RX at a list price of $42,990. Next here is the middle-of-the-range ST at $49,690, and finally there's the vaguely luxurious STX range topper at $54,490. We should add that there's a version positioned between the RX and ST called the SL, which pairs the ST's bigger engine with much of the RX's stripped-back vinyl-floored interior and is priced right in between. The other thing to keep in mind is the fact that list pricing in the ute market needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Nissan and others are open to private and fleet discounts alike, and if you're a small business operator with an ABN, you'll get a better rate too. The tray on all dual cab Navaras is 1.5 metres long, almost half a metre deep, and has 1130 mils between the arches. If you want a longer tray again, you can always opt for the slightly awkward looking king cab body style. But it's not what's in the tray that's particularly important to me, as opposed to what's underneath it. Most utes have leaf rear springs, great at carrying heavy loads, but often a little less comfortable when the tray is unladen. The Navara, by contrast, uses coil springs. However, we found the previous iterations of this generation to be the worst in the class at carrying loads of 700 kilos and above. Thankfully this year, Nissan introduced a series of changes to all versions from the SL upwards. Mostly the adoption of dual-rate rear coil springs, designed to simultaneously improve ride comfort when unladen and to keep the body control better when you've got 600 kilos or more in the tray. Payloads vary from 931 kilos on the STX, 968 kilos in the ST, and 1015 kilos for the RX. If you want to lug even heavier weights, you can also option the RX as a cab chassis with leaf springs. The weekend before this video was filmed, I put 600 kilos worth of wood in the back of the ST and found it much more settled and less droopy at the rear than the Series 1 was. Check out the written component at caradvice.com to see those images. As we found on numerous ute comparison tests before, the Navara does have a little bit less rear seat space than some of its major rivals. Moreover, the seat base here is really short and doesn't offer all that much under thigh support. Nevertheless, as you can see, there's still room back here for two big blokes. Moreover, this grab handle on the B-pillar makes getting in really easy. We also like the fact that you have amenities on all variants here, such as rear air vents and this opening rear window. On the safety front, you have child seat attachments, including recently adopted ISOFIX anchors, as well as side curtain airbags running the length of the car. All Navara dual cabs have a 5-star ANCAP crash rating with a 2015 date stamp. A lot of buyers use the ST and STX as second family cars for weekends and school runs, and there's little reason not to. The RX might be tasked with carrying burly builders and council workers though, which is where that pokey rear may be most felt. Let's start with the RX. Now, it all feels suitably back to basics and no frills in here, from the vinyl floors that are easy to clean to the urethane steering wheel, the plethora of blank spots where buttons are on higher spec versions, through to the head unit that looks really old school, maybe something out of the early 2000s. On the plus side though, it's got Bluetooth audio and phone connectivity that repairs really quickly, it's got a USB point. You've even got cruise control and a small reversing camera display mounted in the rear view mirror. The other thing we've noticed is that it's really well built. The panel gaps are consistent and the quality of these hard-wearing plastics is actually quite high-end. It feels a little bit better screwed together than maybe the Ford Ranger or Holden Colorado do. On a side note, that SL spec we mentioned earlier loses this head unit and gets a small non-touch colorized screen. What about the ST? This version definitely feels like a step up. Most importantly, you get a 7-inch centre touchscreen with satellite navigation and a bigger reversing camera display. You also get carpet on the floors as opposed to vinyl and a bigger digital trip computer. But if it's luxury features that you really want, then the STX might be the one for you. The range topper replaces the key with a starter button. You also get dual zone climate control, a leather wrapped steering wheel, reversing sensors and an overhead 360-degree camera. Moreover, for an extra $2,500, you can also get heated leather seats and even a sunroof. Downsides? Well, there's no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto integration, which will frustrate some. There's also no modern safety tech such as autonomous emergency braking or radar cruise control. And there's no telescopic adjustment on the steering wheel. It only goes up and down. It may be pedantic, but the design of the wheel is also short-sighted. I have a habit of tooting the Navara's horn when parking due to the cover's positioning, and I'm not alone. The most impressive aspects of the Series 3 Navara range become really apparent as soon as you jump behind the wheel. The new steering system is definitely better than before. It's only got 3.5 turns lock to lock, not 4 like the previous version, and it's less resistant and lighter, which makes it more amenable to urban driving. The revised suspension setup is also pretty noticeable. The new rear springs with dual rate coils and the familiar double wishbone up the front is really the setup and calibration that the Navara should have had all along. It's more composed and comfortable doing heavy lifting, and it's also a bit cushier and more compliant even when unladen for daily driving. In terms of ride comfort, I think the ST I'm driving at the moment is actually the sweet spot, and that's because it has more insulating sidewall on its tyres, because its alloy wheels are smaller at 16 inches as opposed to the STX's 18s. There are 2 engine options under the bonnet. The RX gets a 2.3 litre diesel with 1 turbo and outputs of 120 kilowatts of peak power and 403 newton metres of peak torque. The SL, ST and STX get a 2.3 with 2 turbos and ramped up outputs of 140 kilowatts and 450 newton metres. All here are matched to 7-speed automatic transmissions, and all are rated to tow up to 3.5 tonnes, provided you have trailer braking. As you'd expect, there are some vibrations through the steering wheel and the seat when at idle, but once you're up and running, the 2.3 diesel is actually pretty refined. There's not a whole lot of clattering. The latter of the engine tunes in particular is really strong off the mark and has an excellent muscular mid-range that sort of belies the relatively small displacement. We definitely say that it's one of the better engines in its class. Nissan claims fuel consumption on the combined cycle of 7 litres every 100 k's, though we did mid to high 8s on a mixed loop comprising towing and carrying loads. The tank is 80 litres. It's clearly one of the segment's most efficient offerings. Off-road, all 4x4s get electronic on-the-fly selection for high-range off-road mode and dedicated low-range reduction gearing. SL and above also get a locking rear diff. Key measures such as axle articulation, engine braking, clearing and fording depth are all about comparable to most key rivals, with the differences between contenders being small. Nissan also has a sizable regional dealer network, plenty of factory accessories to dig into, and bushy-friendly 20,000 kilometre or annual servicing intervals. Righto, so there's a quick look at the Nissan Navara range. The RX. Well, if you're a big fleet buyer and you're after some no-frills, no-nonsense workhorses, you might not be getting all the answers to your questions on a video like this. But if you're a small business operator who's after something similar, I might suggest you head up to the Navara SL, which to me offers more for your money. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the Navara STX, the range topper. Those suspension tweaks at the back means that it carries loads better than before and is also a bit more comfortable, while the steering changes at the front make it a nicer proposition to drive, particularly around town, where many owners will spend much of their time. It still looks the part and has enough luxury inside to justify its price tag, particularly if you option the sunroof and the leather seats. And that 360 camera is a nice point of difference as well. However, my pick of the range is the Navara ST. It offers all of the suspension improvements of the STX, coupled with perhaps an even slightly more comfortable ride thanks to the higher sidewall tyres. It also gets plenty of tech inside the cabin and looks the part as well. Most importantly, Nissan has shown itself willing in the past to do great deals. There's no doubt you're going to drive out of the showroom in one of these for well under 50 grand drive away. If you want more information on any one of these variants, head over to caradvice.com and check out the written component of this range review.